On the night of their wedding, the most feared Mafia boss in Seoul stared into his bride's trembling eyes. The room was silent. The guests had gone home. And for the first time, she was completely alone with the man she had spent 2 years trying to destroy. Her heart pounded. Not because she was afraid of him, but because if he discovered her secret, she wouldn't survive the night. For 2 years, she lied to him, manipulated him, pretended to love him, all for one purpose: revenge. Before we continue, if you love Korean romance, mafia drama, billionaire secrets, and shocking plot twists, make sure you subscribe to Love, Lies, and Fate, Korean Stories. Because the deeper this story goes, the more dangerous the secrets become. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. But then, the mafia boss slowly stepped closer, his cold eyes never leaving hers. And then he whispered something that made her blood run cold. "I know who sent you." What she didn't know was that he had known the truth from the very beginning. And yet, he married her anyway. To understand why the most dangerous man in Seoul married the woman sent to destroy him, we need to go back 2 years earlier. 2 years before the wedding, Han Ji-woo wasn't thinking about love. She wasn't dreaming about marriage. And she certainly wasn't planning to become the wife of the most feared man in Seoul. At 26, Ji-woo had only one goal: revenge. To everyone around her, Han Ji-woo seemed perfect. She was beautiful, brilliant, strong, the kind of woman who never let life break her spirit. But behind her confident smile was a wound that never healed. 7 years earlier, Ji-woo's life was completely different. Her father was an honest businessman, a man respected by everyone who knew him. Her family wasn't wealthy, but they were happy. Then one night, everything fell apart. News spread across Seoul. Her father had been accused of laundering money for one of the city's most dangerous criminal organizations. The accusations shocked everyone, including Ji-woo. The police arrived before sunrise. Neighbors watched from their windows. Reporters gathered outside. And as Ji-woo stood frozen in fear, her father was taken away in handcuffs. Before entering the police car, her father turned toward her. His eyes were filled with sadness, but not fear, not guilt, only sadness. And with a trembling voice he said, "Ji-woo, I didn't do this." Weeks later, before he could clear his name, Han Ji-woo's father was found dead in his prison cell. The official report called it suicide. Ji-woo never believed it. Without her father, everything collapsed. Their home was seized. Their savings disappeared. Friends abandoned them. People whispered behind their backs. And overnight, the family lost everything. As Ji-woo searched for answers, one name kept appearing. A name powerful enough to make witnesses disappear. A name feared throughout Seoul's underworld. Kang Min-jae. That night, standing before her father's grave, Han Ji-woo made a promise. A promise she would spend years keeping. No matter how powerful Kang Min-jae was, no matter how dangerous his empire became, she would uncover the truth. And if he was responsible, she would destroy everything he had built. For years, Han Ji-woo believed Kang Min-jae had stolen her family, her future, and her happiness. What she didn't know was that the truth was far more dangerous than the lie she had been living. And soon, her path would lead directly to the man she hated most. In Seoul's underworld, there was one name that carried more power than fear itself. A name spoken in whispers. A name that made powerful men lower their voices. Kang Min-jae. the devil of Seoul. At only 32 years old, Kang Min-jae controlled one of the most powerful criminal empires in South Korea. Businesses, nightclubs, real estate, security firms. His influence stretched across the city like an invisible web. To his enemies, he was ruthless. To his rivals, he was untouchable. And to the people who crossed him, he was their worst nightmare. Nobody challenged Kang Min-jae twice. One rainy evening, a rival organization believed they had finally found a way to eliminate him. They were wrong. Within minutes, the hunters became the hunted. When the last survivor was brought before him, Min-jae didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He simply looked the man in the eyes and delivered a warning that would spread through the underworld by sunrise. But power came with a price. While the city feared him, very few truly knew him. The expensive suits, the luxury cars, the endless wealth. None of it could fill the emptiness he carried inside. Because long before he became the devil of Seoul, Kang Min-jae was just a boy trying to survive. A boy who learned that kindness could be exploited and weakness could get you killed. There was something else the world didn't know. A secret he had carried for years. A secret connected to a man who died 7 years ago. A secret connected to Han Ji-woo. Inside the file was a photograph. A smiling young woman. Han Ji-woo. The daughter of a man whose death still haunted him. For years, their lives had moved in separate directions. One driven by revenge, the other trapped by secrets. Neither realizing that fate was slowly pulling them toward each other. And very soon, their paths would finally cross. Han Ji-woo spent years searching for a way into Kang Min-jae's world. She thought she was hunting a monster. But when fate finally opened the door, she willingly stepped inside. For 7 years, Han Ji-woo searched for a way into Kang Min-jae's world. But getting close to the most powerful man in Seoul was nearly impossible. His enemies couldn't reach him. Journalists couldn't investigate him. Even the police struggled to touch him. Then one day, an opportunity appeared. Marries Holdings, one of Seoul's fastest growing companies. Officially, it was a respected business empire. Unofficially, everyone knew it belonged to Kang Min-jae. And they were hiring. Ji-woo knew this was her chance. If she could get inside the company, she could get closer to Min-jae, closer to the truth, and closer to her revenge. Hundreds of candidates applied. Only a handful would be selected. Ji-woo arrived early, prepared, confident, and hiding a secret no one could imagine. The interview was supposed to be routine, until the elevator doors opened, and Kang Min-jae stepped inside. For the first time, Han Ji-woo came face to face with the man she hated most. Ji-woo had imagined this moment for years. She expected anger, hatred, maybe even satisfaction. Instead, she felt something she wasn't prepared for. Nothing. The monster she had built in her mind looked surprisingly human. As the elevator climbed higher, Min-jae glanced toward her, only for a second. But something about her caught his attention. Something familiar. Something he couldn't explain. 3 days later, the phone finally rang. Han Ji-woo had been hired. She was officially inside Kang Min-jae's empire. The first step of her revenge was complete. On her first day, Ji-woo walked through the towering glass doors of Marries Holdings. Most employees saw opportunity. She saw a battlefield. Every smile was a disguise. Every conversation could hide a secret. And somewhere inside this empire was the truth about her father's death. What Ji-woo didn't know was that her carefully planned mission had already failed. Because from the very first day, Kang Min-jae knew exactly who she was. And instead of stopping her, he allowed her to stay. Han Ji-woo believed she was infiltrating Kang Min-jae's world. But she had no idea that she had just become part of a game he was already controlling. And the deeper she stepped into his world, the harder it would become to tell the difference between revenge and something far more dangerous. Weeks turned into months. Han Ji-woo's plan was working perfectly. She gained the trust of her colleagues, earned promotions, and slowly moved closer to Kang Min-jae, closer than she had ever imagined. The more time Ji-woo spent around Min-jae, the more confused she became. This wasn't the ruthless monster she had expected. He was disciplined, calm, respectful, and surprisingly kind to the people who worked for him. At first, it was the little things. The way he remembered everyone's names. The way he stayed late to solve problems himself. The way he quietly helped people without asking for recognition. The details didn't match the image she had spent years believing. One evening, a storm swept across Seoul. Most employees had already gone home. But Ji-woo remained at the office, finishing an important project. She didn't realize someone else was still there too. Hours later, Ji-woo looked up from her desk and found Min-jae standing nearby, holding 2 cups of coffee. For the first time, they spoke about something other than work. Dreams, regrets, life. And behind Min-jae's confident exterior, Ji-woo caught a glimpse of loneliness. A few days later, Ji-woo left the office late. The streets were nearly empty. Then she heard footsteps behind her. Someone was following her. Her pace quickened. So did theirs. Fear gripped her chest. Then suddenly, a black luxury car stopped beside her. The door opened, and Kang Min-jae stepped out. The men following her immediately disappeared, without a single word, as if they knew exactly who he was. As they drove through the city, Ji-woo stared out the window, trying to ignore the truth. The closer she got to Kang Min-jae, the harder it became to hate him, and that terrified her more than anything else. Han Ji-woo entered Kang Min-jae's world seeking revenge. But revenge required hatred, and with every passing day, that hatred was slowly disappearing. The question was no longer whether she could destroy him. The question was whether she wanted to. As Han Ji-woo grew closer to Kang Min-jae, she wasn't the only one paying attention. Somewhere in the shadows, someone was watching, and they weren't happy. Across Seoul, a rival Mafia family was growing impatient. For years, Kang Min-jae had dominated the city. His power continued to grow. His enemies continued to disappear. And now, someone had decided it was time to send a message. A week later, Marries Holdings hosted one of the most exclusive charity galas in Seoul. Politicians, business leaders, celebrities. Everyone wanted to be seen in Kang Min-jae's presence. Ji-woo almost didn't attend. But Min-jae personally invited her. And for reasons she didn't fully understand, she accepted. The moment she entered the ballroom, Min-jae noticed her. And for a brief second, the entire room seemed to disappear. Then everything changed. The lights suddenly went out. Screams filled the room. Chaos erupted. And hidden among the guests, armed men began moving toward Min-jae. But Min-jae wasn't their real target. Ji-woo was. Before she could react, a hand grabbed her arm and dragged her into the darkness. When Ji-woo opened her eyes, she was trapped inside an abandoned warehouse. Alone, terrified, and surrounded by enemies. The kidnappers believed Kang Min-jae would never come. They believed no man would risk his empire for one woman. They were wrong. Within hours, the warehouse became a battlefield. And when the dust finally settled, only one man remained standing. Kang Min-jae. Ji-woo expected anger, questions, demands. Instead, Min-jae simply wrapped his coat around her shoulders and asked, "Are you hurt?" 3 days later, the entire city was shocked. Business headlines exploded. News stations couldn't stop talking about it. Because Kang Min-jae, the most feared man in Seoul, had announced his engagement. Every instinct told her to walk away. Every promise she made to her father demanded revenge. And yet, the word escaped her lips. Yes, the city celebrated what looked like a perfect love story. A powerful man, a beautiful woman, a fairy tale wedding. But behind the smiles, one carried a secret mission, and the other carried a secret truth. Both were heading toward a wedding that would change everything. The wedding dominated every headline in Seoul. Business leaders attended. Politicians offered congratulations. Even rival organizations watched from a distance. The devil of Seoul was finally getting married. To everyone watching, it looked like a fairy tale. A powerful man marrying the woman he loved. A beautiful bride beginning a new chapter. But only Ji-woo knew the truth. She wasn't walking toward love. She was walking toward revenge. As they exchanged vows, Ji-woo struggled to meet his eyes. Every promise felt heavier than the last, because she was carrying a secret capable of destroying everything. The celebration lasted for hours. Music filled the ballroom. Champagne flowed endlessly. Guests laughed and danced. But Ji-woo barely heard any of it. Her mind was somewhere else. Near midnight, the final guest said goodbye. The music faded. The lights grew quieter. And for the first time, Ji-woo and Min-jae were completely alone. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened, and they stepped into Min-jae's private penthouse overlooking Seoul. The city sparkled beneath them. But Ji-woo's heart felt heavier than ever. This was the moment she had worked toward for years. She was finally inside. Inside his home. Inside his life. Inside the empire she planned to destroy. The room was silent. Min-jae removed his jacket, walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows, and stared out at the city. Ji-woo waited, unsure of what would happen next. Then finally, he spoke, his voice calm, steady, almost gentle. "Han Ji-woo, I know who sent you." The world stopped. Ji-woo couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Couldn't think. Every plan. Every lie. Every secret she had protected for years collapsed in a single sentence. How long? The question escaped her lips before she could stop it. Min-jae looked at her. From the beginning. Ji-woo stared at him in disbelief. From the beginning? The interviews. The promotions. The trust. The proposal. The wedding. He had known all along. But what Min-jae said next was even more devastating. "Your father wasn't killed by my organization." Silence filled the room. Ji-woo felt her knees weaken. For 7 years, you were chasing the wrong enemy. Your father was framed. And the people responsible made sure the blame pointed toward me. Slowly, Min-jae opened a secure drawer and placed a thick file on the table. Documents, photographs, evidence. The truth Ji-woo had spent years searching for. The name staring back at her wasn't Kang Min-jae. It was someone she trusted. Someone who had comforted her after her father's death. Someone who helped fuel her desire for revenge. Someone who had manipulated her for years. Han Ji-woo stared at the file. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded. Because the name staring back at her wasn't Kang Min-jae. It was someone she had trusted for 7 years. Someone who had comforted her after her father's death. Someone who had helped guide her search for justice. Someone she considered family. Slowly, Ji-woo turned the page. And what she saw next made the blood drain from her face. No. That's impossible. Her voice barely escaped her lips. Because the final photograph in the file showed something that shouldn't exist. Something that proved her father's death had been planned long before anyone knew. And in the center of the photograph, standing beside the real mastermind, was a face she never expected to see. A face that changed everything. Then suddenly, a loud notification echoed through the penthouse. Min-jae's phone lit up. His expression instantly darkened. Ji-woo had never seen fear in his eyes before. Until now. He looked at the screen, then at her, and whispered, "We're too late. The game has already begun." Who do you think was in the photograph? Was Kang Min-jae telling the truth? And who is the real mastermind behind Han Ji-woo's father's death? Leave your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video if you're enjoying the story. And subscribe to Love, Lies and Fate. Korean stories, so you don't miss the next chapter. Because in the next episode, Han Ji-woo finally comes face to face with the person who destroyed her family. And the truth is more dangerous than she ever imagined.